As with most things, it depends. Welcome back, friends. Happy Monday. I spent last week, 3 days last week, on the East Coast with my youngest brother, actually. And in addition to consuming way too much food, do you like the smash burgers? The smashies, as the kids call them? Do you like those? Man, there's a guy over there in the Lauderdale area he's got a trailer now. I've been following him on Instagram for a while. Boy, it was so nice I did it twice. Two doubles and tots. Epic smash burgers. I think he's eat_BMC on Instagram. I'll check it out. But the main reason I went over there was to go up to Lake Worth on Sunday to see the finish of the crossing for cystic fibrosis. Now, if you followed along for any length of time, you've likely heard me talk about the crossing. It's an 80-mile paddle. 80 miles from Bimini to Lake Worth. So across the Atlantic Ocean, across the Gulf Stream, in the middle of the night. They set off at midnight on Saturday. The winning team finished in like 11 hours and 20 minutes. 21 minutes. I mean, that's just... They were moving. And one of the things... I took a bunch of cameras. I took my GoPro. I took my Insta360 with the intention of shooting some video. But I didn't really know what the layout was going to be, what the situation was going to be, and, you know, we were too far away. I did shoot video of the winners crossing. I did put that on Instagram, but you can't really see anything. And they're sitting two up on a board. Two boards, two people on each board, and you can't blame them. They've just paddled 80 miles. But I was trying to figure out how I was going to carry all this stuff around with me. And I thought, well, I've got fanny packs, but I don't really have a fanny pack that's big enough to put like a little mini tripod in and all that stuff. And I thought, I do have Anchor hip packs at the shop, because I also wanted to be able to take my sandals off when I got to the sand. And what am I going to do with my sandals? So, lo and behold, field tested the Anchor hip pack, and it worked great. It's big enough that that's the microphone and the dead cat for the little microphone I've got, spare batteries, there's the Insta360, and here is the little tripod slash selfie stick with my GoPro on it. Now, I used none of it. But the thing worked great. The sandals just went in the flap, and then it's got webbing on the side, so you can attach a rando pack, or in this case, a sidekick pouch. And as I was walking out of the store, I looked on my table and it was like, oh, there's that old sidekick pouch that I had. And it just happens to be the same color. It's got one of the old patches on it. And I thought, I'll attach that and use that too. So, yeah, I think I'll just keep it. But there's a handful of those left on the website if you want to get your own. And I'll put the link down in the description. And that's the end of my shameless selling. But it is a really nice pack, and it worked really well, and I could see lots of uses for it, especially being able to attach those pouches on the side, give you a little bit more carrying, and let you carry some water if you're out walking around. So a couple of weeks ago, when I was having my crisis of faith, as it were, I got a bunch of suggestions, which I always do, and you guys are always really good about that. Chris Alto, I don't know, I screen saved it. Chris Alto 7373. He asked 3 or 4 questions, one of which asked what was the proper way to install a toilet roll. You know, does the paper come over the top or under? And obviously over the top. If you're doing it any other way, you're just an animal. What makes a modern ATV better than a 90s mountain bike? Okay. So, like I say, I don't know if better is the right question. You see a lot of people trying to save old mountain bikes, and the more distance that I get from being involved really closely with the bike business, you know, I'm sure my attitudes and some of my thoughts are going to change, but this one I don't think will. You have to consider 2 very important things if you're talking about trying to save an old, especially 90s mountain bike. One, it's always going to cost more than you think it is. People, I think, have an idea. They find this clapped out old bike. They think the frame is still good. They want to rescue it, and they're going to make this the touring bike of their dreams. And it's going to cost less than buying a new bike. It almost is never the case, especially if you don't have the ability to do the work yourself. It makes it a little easier if you can do all the work. But the thing you got to remember with 90s mountain bikes, top tubes, pretty long, which isn't really as big an issue, especially if you're talking about using a swept back bar, but the head tubes were really short. And most of them have had suspension forks on them, which means you're going to have to buy a fork. So you're going to have to find a fork that's got the right offset and all of that jazz to make so that the bike rides the way it should. And then, you know, what kind of condition are the wheels in? Because that's going to be the next biggest expense. You can probably find a fork for a reasonable amount of money, but wheels, not so much. Unless you just want to go digging. So you got to consider the money. And then if you need to, you know, if you're going to have somebody do the work, yeah, it just becomes one of those things. You know, I talked 3 or 4 weeks ago about my old buddy Tom Pettigo, rest his soul. We got this FX bike in at A1 Cyclery that was a warranty. I think the fork was warranted or something, and Trek just sent whoever had the bike just sent him a new bike. So we had this FX hybrid sitting back there, and everything was pretty good except for the fork. And Tom said, "Can I take this and turn it into a commuting bike?" I said, "Sure." So he bought a fork, I think from Surly, and then went about trying to get this thing together to put it in a condition that he wanted it to be in to commute on. And by the time he was done with it, he looked at me and he goes, you know, I should have known better, because the money I've put into this, I could have bought a new bike. So, and that's at, you know, employee prices. So the money is probably the biggest thing. And then it's just, you know, how are you going to work it so that, especially if you want the handlebars to be relatively high, and by that I mean even with or a tick above the saddle, you know, that's going to probably require a new fork, stem, obviously handlebars. I mean, it's like all the things that you don't think about, but when you finally get the thing and you start working on it and you go, oh, I didn't think about the fact that I was going to need this, 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 and this. I was going to need a new chain. I'm probably going to need new cables and housing because the bars are farther up, you know, higher or farther out or closer in, and this shift cable housing is all blown out, and I didn't notice that, and I didn't notice the big dent in the rear wheel. I mean, yeah, it's never as cheap as you think it's going to be. And you got to think about how the bikes are going to ride, because those bikes are long and low. That's just the way they made them back then. So I hope you'll go and check out the, it's crossingforcf.com. And, you know, check them out on Instagram. There's a ton of great video. I mean, it's a lot of water and a lot of people paddling paddle boards, but it's a great cause. And I've said it a number of times that when I finished that 24-hour adventure race, I said, you know, I was never going to do anything else that required me to miss a meal. But man, I start thinking about this thing, and it's just like something has awakened. And I wish it would go back to sleep. I hope you're all doing well. Obviously, Chris Alto 73, whatever it was. I hope that answers your question. Thanks for the suggestions, as always. Thanks for watching. I hope you're all well. And yeah, I hope something good happens to you today.